And welcome to Ask Me Anything About Politics. My name is Jared Berenstein. I'm here to answer all your questions about politics. So if you got any questions about politics, just let me know in the chat, and I will do my best to give you a great and accurate and as unbiased of an answer as anybody can manage. What's up, Orion McMillan? I am waving back to you. So yeah, you got any questions about politics? Just let me know in the chat. I'll be happy to answer any question that you have, regardless of how simple or complicated it might be. I know that politics can be really intimidating when you're first trying to learn about it because of how unnecessarily complicated it is and how many abbreviations and last names that just kind of get bandied about as though everybody knows what these words mean. And also, politics is really confusing these days because of all the misinformation and propaganda that is going on out there. So, where can you go to ask all your questions? You can go right here. And yeah, you don't have to worry about getting roasted or debated or made fun of. I don't believe in making fun of people for asking questions or trying to learn new things. What's up, Ecuadorian? Good to see you again. More saving, more doing. That's the power of the Home Depot. What a weird thing to say, Ecuadorian. So yeah, any questions about politics, just put them in the chat. Everybody is welcome here. Everybody on the political spectrum is welcome. Orion says, "Do you lean more liberal or conservative?" I consider myself to be a progressive Democrat. So lefty person. That is my vibe there. Galahad says, "What are your opinions on the Electoral College? It's got to go. It is antiquated. It is stupid. It dilutes the power of certain people's votes, and it de-incentivizes people to be part of the political process. If you're if you don't live in a swing state, no matter if you're a Republican or a Democrat, the Electoral College makes you feel like your vote doesn't matter. So if you're a Democrat living in California, you're like, I might as well not vote. There's enough Democrats here where we're definitely going to win. If you're a Republican, then you start thinking, oh, I might as well not vote because the state's going to go blue either way. I say let's get more people voting. I feel like that would probably be a good move. What's up, JP? Good to see you. Ecuadorian says, just like to make you laugh. How dare you judge me, sir? I'm happy to give you those laughs. Orion says, do votes really matter? 100% votes matter. I know that things like gerrymandering in the Electoral College and the Senate map make it feel like your vote doesn't matter, but it 100% does. It is the perfect distillation of the power of the many, where maybe you are just one person living in, some city or state, and, you and a bunch of other people that feel like you all cast your vote for the same person or ballot measure, and all of a sudden that thing happens. It is a cool, I don't know. It is extremely cool. I'm an aggressively cool human being, and I have to remind my wife about this all the time. But one of the things that I am unabashedly dorky about is voting, and I just think voting is cool, and I recognize that that makes me a big old dork. John Abbott says, in my opinion, the problem with the Electoral College is solely in the fact that most states do winner take all. If states were forced to divide their electoral college votes as close to their state's popular vote as possible, it wouldn't be the problem it has become. I generally agree with that, John Abbott. But I mean, if we're dividing the electoral college votes based on the state population, like what is stopping us from just doing popular vote at that point? That just seems like the popular vote with more steps. Andrew says, I'm an aggressively cool person. I am. There's no doubt about it. Shork says, are Tuesday's election wins at all indicators of the midterms? So the answer is yes and no. The same way that polling is just a snapshot of the moment, these elections only prove that Democrats were really strong in these elections. We're a year away from the midterms still, and literally anything can happen. Like major world events, natural disasters, the influence of billionaire dollars and adversarial nations on our political zeitgeist. Like anything can happen. What we're potentially looking down the barrel of is the Republican Party sort of like, throwing their fascist agenda into hyperdrive because they recognize that they're in a weaker position than even they potentially thought they were. And so, what Donald Trump was talking about yesterday on his news conference was basically like, The shutdown is the reason why we did so poorly. So let's end the filibuster so we can end the shutdown. And also, we can pass a whole bunch of voter suppression laws once the filibuster is gone. So, yeah, they are not stopping. They are going to double and triple down on their bullshit in order to try to you know, make up for how vastly unpopular they are. Alrighty. Scoot, B Scootin says it was a blue cake. I think you mean it was a blue wave. Probably a typo there. Galahad says, do you think that the executive should stay away from the chamber, or do you favor the UK system where it's combined? I'm not really sure what you mean by the chamber, as I feel like you're talking about like UK politics very specifically. So yeah, can you translate that to American politics? Tishy says, yeah, that's true. They're going to do everything to stop anything from happening. Yeah, we were looking down the barrel of massive voter suppression tactics. We were looking down the barrel of Donald Trump created crises so that he can justify invoking the Insurrection Act and a whole bunch of other stupid bullshit like that. So we're just going to have to be vigilant. We're just going to have to keep on doing the work. Galahad says, Congress, I do apologize. So on the one hand, I do like the British system where all the people in Congress get to yell at the president. Like I saw, who was it? Was it Tony Blair? We saw a video of him at the beginning of it, and at the end he was like sweating and his tie was all undone and stuff like that. Like, yeah, I would love, you know, Donald Trump would have to listen to Jasmine Crockett tell him what a piece of shit he is. I would fucking pay $1,000 for a ticket to that. Yeah, I really can't see a downside to that, honestly. I mean, I guess it would just put the Republicans in Congress in a better position to kiss his ass in front of everybody, which is just, nauseating. So yeah, I don't know if that's like the main issue with American politics, but I'd be open to it. Tishy says we all have to stay strong and keep fighting for our rights. That is 100% accurate. Rory says Democrat or Republican? Democrat. Fletch Lives Again says, can you go over what kinds of voter suppression actions they can do? So, voter suppression is, it seems silly to call it this, but it's like, it's an art, like they are constantly looking for interesting, new, creative ways to disenfranchise voters, lower voter turnout, and specifically make it hard for people in Democratic areas to vote. So this can be anything from closing down polling locations in Democratic areas so that you have to drive an hour to get to your poll. And then because there's so many people going there, you have to wait 5 hours. Getting rid of vote by mail, getting rid of early voting. Let's see here. Voter ID laws are basically a massive voter suppression tactic. And if you're in a state with voter ID laws, then they can do other shady shit like closing down DMVs. So it makes it difficult for you to get an ID that would be able for you to prove that you are, a legally registered voter. And then there's more, sinister shit like voter intimidation, sending ICE to the polls, trying to scare people away. Potentially even more illegal shit like sending in ICE to steal boxes of votes from Democratic areas, or declaring martial law to cancel elections. There's kind of like infinite things they could try to do. So we just kind of have to be vigilant. We just kind of have to be totally vigilant. All right, MHMF says, but as a young white man, what do I look at for info? So if you want to avoid the bias of individual news sources, you just got to try to get your news from a bunch of different sources so that you're kind of trying to balance that out. The only thing you want to avoid as far as like where you get your information is right-wing sources. And I know, I'm a lefty. I'm here telling you not to look at right-wing sources. Like it seems like I'm just trying to tell you like don't go to the guys who are saying the things that I don't like. But we have data on this, and right-wing news sources are the least accurate of all news sources and the most with a blatant partisan bias. So, if you want to get accurate news, if you want to actually see what's going on, you have to avoid right-wing news because they're just feeding you their propaganda narratives. All right. The Crazy Dog Bull says, can iced tea be made without ice? Sure. Mike Green says, do you think that them trying to suppress votes will be more obvious after Tuesday's win? I think so. I mean, there were a bunch of bomb threats into New Jersey, and a bunch of registered voters had to cast provisional ballots in Pennsylvania for some shady shit. So who the fuck knows? Okay, Chaotic says with our major deficit, with our major deficit issues, do you think with Democratic policies make it worse? No. The deficit goes up when Republicans are in charge because they always cut taxes for the billionaires, which gives us less revenue. They try to make up for that by cutting like welfare programs and shit like that, but it is the amount of money that we spend on welfare is not even close to the amount of money that we lose by not taxing billionaires. And so if you look at it, the deficit skyrockets during Republican administrations, and maybe it goes down a little bit during Democratic administrations, but then it just skyrockets again during Republican administrations. African Mother 53 says, do we need Dems to open the government? No. The Republicans could just nuke the filibuster. MHM says, okay, to be honest, I'm Christian and people like to group me in the right, but I'd say it's like two wings of the same bird. I just don't know what to trust half the time. So I've heard this argument, MH, all the time. And I just believe that that is an inaccurate narrative, that it's two wings of the same bird, because there are wildly different outcomes for the country based on who is in charge. The platforms are wildly different. The politicians themselves are wildly different. If you want two very specific examples, here we go. There are people alive today in America because of the Affordable Care Act, which was only possible because people voted for Democrats. And there are women today who are dead because of abortion bans that were only possible because people voted for Republicans. So I'm sure that those people who are both alive or dead, or people who are stuck in ICE detention facilities right now, even though they are citizens or veterans or legal residents or whatever, they would 100% tell you that there is a massive difference between the two political parties. Pedro, stop spamming the comments. I don't know what that means. Chaotic says, you think that socialist programs that the Democrats offer aren't worse? And Obama made it worse. No, Obama did not make it worse, and no socialist programs don't make the deficit worse. Socialist programs, however you're describing them, what I would call welfare programs or social safety net programs, what they do is they alleviate the cost of living crisis on the middle and lower class, meaning that we have more people able to spend more money, which strengthens the economy. This is what Biden used to always talk about when he would say building the economy from the bottom up. What Republicans try to do is try to build the economy from the top down, and we are looking at what happens when that happens, which is a massive cost of living crisis, rampant hyper monopolization, unbelievable income inequality. Like there's just no contest, like the Republican economic system doesn't work. The Democratic system does work. Right. MH says, one last question. What do you think of the Israel-Palestine war? Everyone is so split. Hold on a second. Pedro de los Reyes says, do you owe something to the 7K Club? I literally don't even know what it is. African Mother says, can you explain the filibuster? Absolutely. So we're gonna go MH about Israel Palestine, and then we're gonna go African Mother about the filibuster. So what do I think about Israel Palestine? What we have here is an extremely long conflict between a bunch of people who are doing really shitty things. The citizens of both of those countries are essentially innocent. So I don't think that we're gonna like fight. I don't think it's productive to be like, I'm Team Palestine, I'm Team Israel. We should be team the people that are living in those countries just trying to live their fucking lives. But both the government of Israel and Hamas, which is basically the de facto ruler of Palestine, are bad actors. Like they are both guilty of war crimes. And Israel, being the more powerful party, is also guilty of perpetrating a genocide against the people of Palestine. So, it's obviously an extremely complicated situation, and there are a lot of people to blame. And so, if you want any more information about that, let me know. So, the filibuster, African Mother, is basically a mechanism by which anybody in the Senate can stop all business from happening by refusing to vote on the thing that is being brought to the floor. If you've ever seen the movie Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, or you've ever seen like a politician just like standing and talking on their feet for like hours and hours and hours, that's the filibuster. That's kind of like the original version of the filibuster. And, you could argue whether or not it is useful to do a filibuster, but at least the old filibuster, you were putting yourself out there, your face was on television or whatever, and everybody knew that you were the one person who was stopping this thing from getting voted on and from any other business being done in the government. And it was physically difficult to do, standing on your feet and talking for hours and hours and hours, you know? So at some point, the filibuster would end because you would be too tired or something like that. Or there would be like a massive public outcry either for or against what you were doing. But then the rules changed. And I want to say that it changed like in the early 2000s, but I don't remember exactly. And now the filibuster is just an email. So we're getting rid of like all the good things about the filibuster. It is literally just an email saying, I'm going to filibuster this. And then that bill is essentially dead. So I think we should get rid of the filibuster, or at the very least, bring back the standing and talking filibuster. All right. Space Plum says, and also the disabled. I don't know what that is in reference to. Galahad says, do you think the U.S. pressure groups are too powerful? Do you mean lobbying organizations? If so, yes. John Abbott says, I have never heard the phrase, this is a constitutional crisis during a Democratic presidency, but I've heard it during every Republican presidency of my adult life. You know, I gotta say, I completely fucking agree with that, John Abbott. Ecuadorian, I'll get to that question in a second, but it looks long. All right, let's get back into these TikTok questions. Flamingo says, what's up, my dude? Do you think the Republicans will end the shutdown next week? Probably. I mean, Donald Trump has a way of pressuring elected Republicans to bending to his will. So I don't really imagine that there's going to be a strong, what do you call it? A strong enough resistance movement to killing the filibuster. I know that, you know, the Senate Majority Leader, John Thune, has said that that's a non starter, but, you know, these guys bend the knee to Trump all the fucking time. They are either fascists themselves or cowards. And so, yeah, I don't really have any faith in the Republican Party doing the right thing either way. Pedro says, do you agree all anti-Semite deport from U.S.? I mean, I don't like anti-Semites for obvious reasons, but I don't know if it's legal justification for deporting anti-Semites. That seems a little draconian. And also, like, how do you judge like who's an anti-Semite and who's not an anti-Semite? Is being anti-Semitic a First Amendment protected right? Like, I have no idea. M says, who do I vote for if I am fiscally liberal but socially conservative? Is that a 30 Rock reference? That's very funny. Dave B says, keep the government shut down forever. I mean, then you're not going to be able to travel by plane. Let's see here. SV2 says, Trump is too moderate. He's not far right enough. That is a very weird thing to say, SV2. I sure hope that you don't really mean that. Okay, user a bunch of numbers says, how did Cory Booker stand and talk for over 24 hours? I guess he's very fit. Okay, African Mother, you are welcome for explaining. SV2 says we need to cut federal aid to all Democrats in favor of keeping the shutdown going. So yeah, SV2, you are not asking questions, so you are out of here. Congratulations. Alrighty, MHM says thank you for the non-bias, greatly appreciated. Thank you. Tishy says honestly, Trump is trying to be king of the world. Yeah, maybe. I mean, I think that if he could wave a wand and be king of the world, he would, but I don't think that he has the stones to stand up to people like Xi and Putin. So, you know, I think he would settle for being king of the Western Hemisphere. Alrighty, Dave B says, I've never been hired by a homeless person or a poor person. How does it trickle up? Because they spend money. That money gets into the economy, basically. That not only does that make it so that businesses can afford to hire more people and expand because they have more revenue, but also that puts more money into the taxes, and then taxes get to be, you know, get to fund other programs that make your life easier. Dave B, I don't know if you're still here. Pedro says, could you describe anti-Semitism? I mean, it's like racism, but specifically just against Jewish people. Jules says, do you think the shutdown continues through Thanksgiving? I don't know. I don't think anybody knows that. Anybody who tells you they know for certain is guessing. Cole C says the programs never work though. Why is that? The government programs work all the time, dude. People are alive today because of the Affordable Care Act. GPS technology, weather prediction services, Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, welfare, SNAP benefits. Like all of these are wildly successful programs. Maybe they have their issues, maybe they have their flaws, but you cannot argue with the results of what they're doing. Cole Cease is not really their band-aids on a bullet hole. Yeah, you know, they are, but think about how much quicker you would bleed out without that band-aid, you know? So yeah, they are wildly successful, but we also need to do other things as well. M says, why do we spend so much on Medicare and Medicaid? Because healthcare is extremely expensive. The Miles File says middle class was literally created by social programs. That is accurate. Cherry Martini says, who'd you vote for? Democrats have been down the ballots. Alrighty. Cole C says the poverty rate's the same as it was before every program. I don't believe that is accurate, Cole C. Bit Nevo says, do you think Marco Rubio knows he's going to prison in the near future? I think it's an open question. Like we have seen an incredible, blue shift in just this most recent election. But will activists and everyday citizens be as consistent and vigilant going into the midterms? Will voter suppression tactics and billionaire propaganda be effective in changing things? Like, it's still an open question. I would love it if the people who are doing crimes in the Trump administration would have some sort of legal accountability, but we have to do the work to make sure that that happens. That Phalaps says, why do establishment Democrats refuse to talk about Zoran even after his victory? So some establishment Democrats are totally cool with Zoran and have endorsed him. Some are not endorsing him. Some are endorsing him, begrudgingly. And I think there's probably two motivations for Democrats who aren't, accepting politicians like Mamdani with open arms. One of them is probably a good faith concern that somebody who calls himself a democratic socialist is going to paint the party in a negative light for certain percentage of the population. Like, are you losing a red state Democrat their House seat because you are endorsing Zohran Mamdani? I don't think that that is a good reason, but I do think that it's at least a good faith reason, because the right is very effective at sort of like demonizing the left with words like communist and socialist and radicals, stuff like that. And then there are the bad faith reasons to not endorse Mamdani for, like maybe you're a centrist and you're worried that a rising progressive wave is going to threaten your, grasp on power, or maybe you're just like a fucking racist or some shit like that. Maybe you are being pressured by AIPAC. Like those I think are bad faith reasons. So yeah, I personally think that we should be encouraging and welcoming with open arms exciting new left-wing politicians like Mamdani, but I can also understand if a generally good politician doesn't want to because they're worried about how it's going to affect down ballot candidates. Again, I don't agree with that. I think that it's still the politically smart move to welcome those kinds of politicians, but I understand at least. Sky Bezos says, let's do the same thing to the right. The fact deniers. I don't know how effective that is. I know that some people have said, like, we need to just mirror their tactics, but I don't know. I think one of the things that the Democrats have going for them is that we are the party of grown-ups and responsible and being responsible. But I could be wrong about that. I don't know. Rise Zen says Reagan signed the bill that says all hospitals need to treat all people. That's not healthcare. I don't know what you mean by that, Rise Zen. Mr. Chow says, gonna ignore the fact that ISIS congratulated Mamdani. I don't know that ISIS did that, but also I don't really give a shit if ISIS did that. Like, Mamdani and ISIS do not have the same policies, but Donald Trump and the KKK do have the same policies. And I'm sure that if Mamdani read that ISIS was endorsing him, that he would, say, I don't want that endorsement and I condemn ISIS in the strongest possible language. So yeah, ISIS can say or do whatever they want, but if that's a real thing, Mr. Chow, which again I'm skeptical of because you don't have a profile picture. 1A Mason says, "Are you biased?" No, I am based. The Fixer Mike says, "Reddit mods on /Democrat sound just as bad as /conservative." I don't know. I don't spend any time on those specific Reddit threads, so I couldn't tell you if those are good or bad places. Mr. Chow says, or maybe we don't want to support an Islamic extremist. Yeah, Mamdani is not an Islamic extremist. That is not a real thing, Mr. Chow. So, all right. Brad to the bone says, I'm sure he's in cahoots with the ISIS. Well, then you're wrong about that. He's not. So yeah. I guess thanks for your comments, guys. You all really tested my patience today. Brad to the bone says, or you're just ignorant. I'm not, though. 1A Mason says, which KKK policies does Trump share? He believes in suppressing marginalized communities. There's a reason why he has changed our asylum policy to basically just be white people. It's because he's a racist, just like the KKK. Alrighty. 1A Mason says, "Will pop it in AI." Okay. Ryzen says, "Your opinion is on point." Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Excellent, everybody. And so, for all my haters on the live stream right now, if you ask a question, like, I'll answer it. Like, I'm not going to boot you just for having different political opinions than me. I'm just going to ask you, like, stop saying things that are obviously false, like ISIS endorsed Mamdani or that he's an Islamic extremist or something. The Fixer Mike says, "Not all Republicans are racist, but about all racists are Republicans." I think that is an excellent point. Thank you, African Mother, for being here. All right, Space Plum says, "I guess the APAC propaganda is stronger than ever." Yeah, 100% Space Plum. The reason why this propaganda is out there, the reason why APAC and the billionaire class spend so much money on it, is because it works on a certain percentage of people, and sometimes that is all that you need. 1A Mason says, "Damn, you are biased." I'm literally not, though. Like, you can double check everything that I'm telling you, my guy. Okay, let's see here. John Abbott says, "But wait, I thought Trump destroyed ISIS in his first term. So how can Mamdani be in cahoots with them if Trump destroyed them and they don't exist anymore?" So confusing. That's a really good question, John Abbott. Deserts G80 says, "Your standpoint on New York mayor asking for donations already?" Question mark. So I don't know if he is. That is news to me. If he is, there is a lot of misinformation out there about Mamdani. So I just say to everybody, like, you got to double and triple check that shit. That being said, I can think of 1,000 reasons why it is necessary to continue to elicit donations even after you won an election. So yeah, I don't view that as what do you call it, disqualifying just by itself. If it was, then maybe you have a problem with Donald Trump doing that exact same fucking thing. 1A Mason says, "It's because he destroyed the caliphate." Your answer is just good question. LOL. Well, that wasn't a question. That was him agreeing with me. 1A. So yeah, ask a question or I'm going to boot you because I'm starting to get tired of your nonsense. JP says, "Does double checking require spending effort and challenging my assumption?" It does, JP. I'm so sorry about that. Brad to the Bone says, "So what's your wife's boyfriend's name?" My wife doesn't have a boyfriend, but my wife does let me fuck your mom because she pays me a lot of money for it. Mia says, "And now with Nancy Pelosi not running again, maybe we'll get another progressive." Yeah, there is already a great progressive running in that race. His name is Sykot. He used to work for AOC, and I've been championing that dude for fucking forever. Okay, Z Latinish says, "Political situation in Serbia." Unfortunately, I don't know enough about it to talk about it, so sorry about that, Z. L. Ohad says, "Are you MAGA?" No, I am not. Liska says, "Given the number of emails I get from Trump asking for donations, I'm not sure why that's the complaint." Excellent point. Brad to the Bone says, "My mom is a dude, so I guess that says a lot about you." Yeah, I fuck any mom that pays me, Brad to the Bone. So yeah, the fact that your mom is a dude does not discriminate. And also later, the Fixer Mike says, "My wife's BF is also Mike." It's so much less confusing. It's pretty funny. Alrighty, Fletch lives again. I agree with you. I don't know if you guys saw. There's some reporting today about some what do you call it? Inside DC sources that elected Republicans are very concerned about what is in the fellow with the island files. Some people are getting very worried about it, and so I am very excited about that information coming to light. Okay, Mr. Chow, we're not clicking on any links. Oh wait, aren't you the Mr. Chow? You were being shitty earlier, weren't you? Let's see here, Mr. Chow. Yeah, you were the guy who was insisting that Mamdani is like an Islamic terrorist or something, and you've been warned. So there you go. The Fixer Mike says, "Jerry, you should follow me. I'm a treasure." JK, I'm sure you are, Fixer. Dan Blackwood says, "Can't be turning down paying moms. I have a mortgage." Exactly. Alrighty, excellent start to the live stream, everybody. My name is Jared Berenstein. I'm here to answer all your questions about politics. Sometimes I get a little spicy. People are spicy at me, but mostly everybody is welcome. Democrat, Republican, everything in between and on the outskirts. Grant David says, "Why wouldn't they have used that information against Trump during the election?" So Grant Davis, there's a little bit of a Three Stooges problem with trying to use things against Trump in elections. in so much as that he does so many things wrong. He does so many awful things. He's done so many awful things. His plans are all terrible. It's like, what in the world do you talk about? And no matter what Democrats talk about, they get yelled at for not talking about the other thing. If Democrats talk about how good their policies are, then they're saying, why aren't you talking about how bad Donald Trump is? If they talk about how bad Donald Trump is, they say, why aren't you talking about what you're going to do? Why are you only saying how bad Donald Trump is? So, if they talk about both, then people say you're ignoring, you're not inspiring people. Like it's a whole fucking thing. Storm Chaser Jason says, "May I join up, please?" My answer to everybody who asks to join my live stream is maybe. I am mercurial. Sometimes I invite people. Sometimes I don't invite people. So if you stick around, ask a question in good faith, you are more likely to get brought up onto the live stream. All right, Kevin says we will never see the fellow with the island files. It's an exercise in futility. You don't know that to be a fact, Kevin. I got to tell you that it really rubs me the wrong way when people say things that with that much confidence that they could never possibly know for a fact. And so I would ask you to have the humility of somebody who recognizes that you do not know what is going to happen in the future. Stephen Michael says, "Do we think Mamdani can deliver on some of these policies like free childcare and free transport?" So, Stephen Michael, there are going to be very powerful people who are going to try to stand in the way of Mamdani accomplishing those goals. And even without those rich people doing those things, governing is hard. And governing a big, diverse city like New York is particularly hard. I have a lot of faith in Mamdani. He's young, he's got a lot of gas in the tank. He has a lot of public support. So I have faith that he's going to, get a lot of yardage just based on that. But I'm also fine with a politician getting caught trying, and saying, "Look, these are the things that we need to that are standing in our way, and we're going to try to solve those problems. But if not, we will try to find other ways to bring down costs." One of the things that made FDR such a great president was that he was like, "All right, we're going to try this thing, and if it doesn't work, we're going to try a different thing." And it was transformative, and it got us out of the depression. Tishy says he's going to give it a hell of a try, and I pray he succeeds. Excellent. Flamingo Mo says, "Why don't these people just do their own lives?" Well, without them, I wouldn't have comments increasing my visibility in the algorithm. The Fixer Mike says, "I think we're all going to be exhausted by next year's primary. So many people opting out." Yeah, I always tell people that self-care is part of the work that we need to do so that we don't get exhausted. And in fact, I just saw an awesome video on TikTok about the character of Tom Bombadil in the Lord of the Rings trilogy. In the purpose of him being there is to remind you that what the hobbits did was really important, but enjoying life and the world and existence is also important. Shork says, "Are you meaningfully convinced that the Island Files would even change Republican opinions?" I think that there are some people in that conspiracy theory world who this is the most important thing for them. And so yeah, I do think that is going to move the needle. I mean, maybe we're going to see Trump's support go from 37% to 28% or something, which again, not low enough for my taste, but significant. Ready. Dan Blackwood says second breakfast is necessary. I agree with that. The Fixer says, "I do know that actually the files won't come out. Can I help break that down?" Fixer, I disagree with you, and I don't think that whatever specifics you are going to bring to the table, you can put them in the comments if you want, but I'm not going to bring you up to say that stuff. Thank you, Lindsay. Joe Padilla says, "Have you seen any of the South Park's parodies?" I kind of fell off of South Park a while ago. I'm glad that they're doing what they're doing, but I have not started watching it again. Susie Spanish says, "Why do some Republicans not want to end the filibuster?" I think there's a bunch of different reasons for it. I think some Republicans like the filibuster because it curbs a lot of Donald Trump's worst excesses, where he will tell them, like, let's do X, Y, and Z. And they're in their brain thinking that's completely psychotic and I'm not going to do that. But they can't tell Donald Trump that they're not going to vote for that. The only thing they can say is, we'd love to, but the filibuster is standing in the way. Potentially, there are some institutionalists who believe that the filibuster is some, like cherished American institution that needs to be protected. Potentially, there are some Republicans that are like, if we get rid of the filibuster and then we lose in 26 and 28, then the Democrats are going to have a fucking field day passing all of their legislation that's going to make everybody's lives better, and then we'll never get elected again. So yeah, there's just a couple of motivations for that. Stephen Michael already did that one. All right, scrolling down to the bottom. Thank you, Hermancy. The Fixer Mike says, okay, fair, but it's a long process not to be pushy about it. Maybe another time. Yeah, of course, Fixer Mike. I get it. I get that sometimes things are difficult to do in the government, but saying that they're never going to come out, I think, is a little hyperbolic and does not communicate the kind of humility that I think we should all have, of recognizing that the world is a crazy and unpredictable place. Susie Spanish says, "Wait, so once they get rid of the filibuster, is it gone forever, not just for this bill?" Potentially, Susie Spanish. I mean, potentially they could get rid of it and then put it back. I think. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, they could just do that. I mean, they have been whittling away at the filibuster, so there's no reason why they couldn't do like a more specific, just getting rid of the filibuster for this thing. Right. Anime and Amine says, why are Americans normalizing the fact that everything is owned by a couple of corporations and rich people? So a lot of people, Amine, are not normalizing that. So I don't think that even the majority of Americans is doing that. There are some people who have bought the billionaire propaganda and are so focused on licking their boots and kissing their ass that they don't recognize how hard they're being fucked by the billionaire class. But yeah, that is not something that is being lost on Americans by and large, I would say. Alrighty. All right. Okay. All right. And got that one. Long process. Got that one. Joe Padilla got that one. All right. So yeah, comments have kind of slowed down a little bit. So let's see if I got any multi-guest requests happening here. All right, the Fixer Mike. Congratulations. You are my one request who is accepted. How is it going? Hello?
Yeah.
Can you see?
So I want to talk about the Iron Files, but I don't want to like try to persuade you. I'm not trying to, tell you that I'm right or anything. But I've been looking at what this discharge petition really means, and it's not what everybody says it is in the public eye.
Okay.
Okay, so the discharge petition is just to skip the chair and the committee. So what happens is right now there's a bill to release these files. It's like HR 4442 or something. I don't know the number. Okay. And that bill is stuck in committee.
Okay.
The discharge petition brings it out of committee.
Yes.
And that's it. Then, because it's a discharge petition, it can only be filed to the parliamentarian and the clerk on the second or fourth Monday that Congress is in session.
Yes.
So then once it's filed, then it becomes a bill on the floor. Well, guess what? Now there's debate. Now there's continuances. Now there's it's just a regular bill that can just die, just like anything else. Not only that, but Mike Johnson controls the calendar, which means if he closes the House again, the bill dies.
Yes. Yes. Okay. So here's my. I agree with everything that you're saying, Mike, but I don't think that means that it is, number one, not worth trying, and number two, that means that we're never going to see that information. Because number one, we already know that there are a majority of House members, Republicans and Democrats, who want to vote yes on that bill. And it is only getting stuck in committee is one of like the delay tactics that the Republican Party is using. That's number one. Number two is every single time a Republican, be it Mike Johnson or whoever, stands in the way of releasing this material, it is fodder and it pushes the needle against the Republican Party. And senators like Ruben Gallego going out there and saying that the GOP is protecting PDF files, like that argument just becomes stronger and stronger the more they try to delay. So yeah, I agree with you. It's a long process. It's going to be difficult, and Johnson is going to do a bunch of really shady shit to try to, obfuscate things. But the right people are scared of this. And so even if it takes months or over a year, it is, number one, still worth doing, and number two, not a foregone conclusion that we are not going to see it.
Well, here's the next thing, though.
Okay.
So it passes the House, then it goes to the Senate, just like a bill. And
Okay.
it has to pass the Senate.
You know, I'm not actually sure about that.
Passes both.
I'm not
it
really.
Does. It's a bill, and then once it passes the Senate, the president has to sign it.
You
the
know,
president will never sign that.
Mike, I'm going to cut you off here because I don't know if that's true. So I'm going to look a little bit more into this and come back in another one, and maybe we can talk about it some more.
It's been nice. Thanks.
All right, take care, buddy. Yeah, that was nice and respectful. An excellent contribution. All right, Ecuadorian. So sorry, I forgot to get back to your question here. Wait, is this the same question you posted before? So Christy Nome was in my home country trying to find a place to put a DHS building, and America is now actively trying to overrun our sovereignty. Where does it end? Trump is doing exactly what Putin is doing in Ukraine. I am outraged and angry. I think you are right to be outraged and angry, and there are a lot of people here in America who are outraged and angry with you, Ecuadorian. But yeah, you know, the only thing that I could tell you is that there are a lot of people in America, both voters and elected officials, who do not want to get into more forever wars, who do not want to be doing strikes in other countries, who do not want to be doing regime change. And so while I can't tell you whether or not that coalition is going to be successful, because, you know, Trump and his MAGA coalition have just been like running over the Constitution and laws in general, like, you know, just look at all these extrajudicial killings that are happening in the ocean. I can tell you that it is not a foregone conclusion that that is going to happen. So, you know, I'll just keep my fingers crossed, and I'll keep doing the work of putting pressure on the government to not do that. And hopefully there'll be enough people like me doing that as well that we can protect your nation's sovereignty going forward. 1A Emson says, basically giving whoever is the majority green light to do it in the future. The problem with the nuclear option is that it changed the entire precedent, basically giving whoever is the majority green light to do it in the future. Yeah, but I don't have a problem with that. 1A Mason, like, why don't we actually have there be consequences for people winning elections? You know, like, so much of our electorate believes that that doesn't really matter who's in charge because so little gets done because of the filibuster. And yes, that might mean some Americans fucking going through it because of shit that the Republican Party is going to pass. But maybe that's how those people will recognize what the Republican Party is and what they're trying to do. And on the converse of that, if we gotten rid of the filibuster during the Biden administration, we wouldn't be having a fight about partisan gerrymandering right now because it would be illegal. We wouldn't be having a fight about voter ID. We would have drastically increased taxes on the rich potentially. Yeah, there's a lot of really incredible legislation that got stalled because of the filibuster. And so, yeah, you know, I don't really care if Republicans do it first or Democrats do it first, but I just say, let's get rid of it, or at the very least, bring back the talking filibuster. Sonia Dabas says, can Trump be held in contempt for not following the judge's orders? That's a really good question, Sonia Dabas. I mean, so presidents are, while they're in office, immune from legal indictments, I guess. And then when they're out of office, they are potentially subject to legal consequences, but not if the Supreme Court decides that what you were doing was an official act, in which case you have complete legal liability. So, short version, if it is going to happen, it's not going to happen while he's in office. Long version, going to continue with the short version. When he gets out of office, it's possible that the Supreme Court runs cover for him, but there's also the possibility that Democrats expand the Supreme Court and remove that precedent, making him then legally liable for all the illegal shit he did when he was in office. Flamingo Mo says, who's going to enforce anything like that against Trump? Bondi, Patel? Yeah, not happening. Well, again, we would need him to be out of office. When he's out of office, we would then have different people in charge of the FBI and the DOJ. And so at that point, you know, everything is on the table. Alrighty. JP says the president is only immune from official acts and can only pardon federal crimes. That is accurate, JP. The Fixer Mike says he won't live that long anyway. He's 79. I don't know. Pieces of shit have a way of living forever sometimes, the Fixer Mike. Right. Unfortunately, it seems things will have to get much worse before some people wake up. Yeah, I agree with that, the Fixer Mike, but that's part of what we do here, is that we talk to people, we convince people, we bring them into the light. Squidball says, why doesn't every state require voter ID? Because it's unnecessary, Squidball. And the Republican Party has admitted that voter ID is just a voter suppression tactic. So if you're concerned about like voter fraud, I would encourage you to check out how much of it there is. It is extremely little. It has never swayed an election ever. I would encourage you to check out the ways that the Republican Party tries to use voter ID to steal elections. Kimberlina says, is filibuster applicable to impeachment vote, or is impeachment always 60 votes regardless? Impeachment is actually 2/3, so it's 67. So it does not have anything to do with the filibuster, Kimberlina. Excellent question. Cheney lived to 94, says JP. This is a funny bit that's going over on here on the on the Twitch and the YouTube. Sixer says, is it true that Trump is launching his own private healthcare, or is it just a meme? He said he is going to. I don't know if it's a real thing. You know, with Trump, you kind of have to wait and see how serious he is about things. He also gets bored and distracted a lot. So, you know. Dolphin Mama says the Supreme Court gave Trump a pass, so even when he's out of office, he can't be charged. Yes, but a Congress could pass a bill undoing a Supreme Court order, or we could add seats to the Supreme Court and remove the far-right extreme majority that they have. Carmine says, are Erica and Mrs. J.D. Vance sister wives now? I don't believe that Usha is going to put up for that shit, so I think it's probably much more likely that we will see, you know, a divorce potentially. I have no idea, you know, but it is funny how messy and Real Housewivesy that shit is, you know. Okie dokie. Walter Messenger says GOP cheats and you'll never convince me otherwise. I know too many conservatives. So Walter, I'm never going to fight you on that. But let's have radical empathy for every other voter. You know, my empathy stops when somebody becomes an elected official because they are making decisions that are affecting lots of people's lives and they are potentially hurting or helping lots and lots of people. But if you're a voter who just got tricked by propaganda or because you were stuck in an information bubble, I think we should all have empathy for those people. Susie Spanish says, can you clarify what you mean by Congress? Did you mean to say Congress? Because you wrote Confress. So yeah, Congress is the two houses of the legislature, the Senate and the House. And so they are two branches of the same wing of the government. They are, you know, broken down in different ways where every state has two senators, but House members are more correlated to the population sizes of the states. Yeah, I think so. I think that's basically all that you might need to know about the differences between the House and the Senate. The House members have to run for re-election every 2 years. Senators keep their seats for 6 years. The House doesn't have the filibuster. If there's a tie in the Senate, the vice president breaks it. But there, I believe, is an odd number of people in the House, so that doesn't really come up, I don't believe. So yeah. Susie Spanish says, my actual question, clarify what you mean by Congress can pass a bill undoing Supreme Court decisions. So yeah, so Congress and the executive, the president, can pass laws. And those laws can be challenged by lawsuits that could potentially make their way up to the Supreme Court. And then the Supreme Court can rule on whether or not those laws are unconstitutional or not. And the system is designed very specifically like this so that every branch of government is equal. And so not one single branch of government can turn into tyranny. And so, yeah, we are potentially looking at a world where, you know, Congress and the president sign a bill, and then the Supreme Court says it's unconstitutional, and then they, you know, try to change the Constitution, or they try to rework the bill to make it, you know, adhere to the Supreme Court's new standards, or we add additional seats to the Supreme Court so that they are not just knocking down bills that they don't like. Like, we should not have an extremist right-wing activist Supreme Court like we have right now. And so I think that the Democratic Party would be justified in expanding the court because the Republican Party has completely, what's the word I'm looking for? They have packed the court with right-wing extremist activists, and I think it is the Democratic Party's responsibility to rebalance the Supreme Court so that it is a fair legal body that is adhering to principles as opposed to just doing whatever the Republican Party and Donald Trump want. Grant Davis says that's false. What do you think is false? Unless Democrats can control, then they will vote to expand the Supreme Court so they can grab that power. So you don't think Democrats are trying to steal elections by making it so easy to commit voter fraud? No, Democrats are not trying to steal elections by making it so easy to commit voter fraud, Grant Davis. There is so little voter fraud that happens in America, it is statistically irrelevant. And again, the Republican Party has admitted that voter ID laws are just a way of suppressing the vote of people they don't want voting. So let's see here. Right-wing radical extremists. Grant Davis says so little that is caught. No, it's all basically caught, Grant Davis. Like, it's very difficult to get away with it. And, there's so little payoff for doing it. But here's my compromise, Grant Davis. How do you feel about making IDs free and really easy to get? Because I think that if we did that, then it would completely nullify the voter suppression element of voter ID laws. So if you agreed to that, then I would be fine with having voter ID laws, so long as we could give every American citizen a free ID that is really easy to get. Let me know. Grant Davis says they are easy to get. No, they are not. And this is where the voter suppression part of it comes in. In red states or purple states where conservatives have a majority, they close down DMVs in Democratic areas so that people that might vote Democrat would have a really hard time getting their IDs. Would you like me to send you some information on that? I would be happy to. Alrighty. Kimberlina says government shutdown doesn't affect the rich. They should pause all private flights. Oh, I love that idea. JP says, I was fine streaming in the forest, no Wi-Fi, but my plan felt better. That's pretty funny. I don't know what's going on over here, but it's pretty funny. Okay. Grant Davis says they should have an ID before the election. Grant Davis, are you going to acknowledge the thing that I said, that Republicans are closing down DMVs in Democratic areas to keep them from getting IDs? Like, do you want to acknowledge that, or are you literally just here to spread right-wing propaganda? Like, are we engaging? Or are you just here to be like, you're wrong, you're a stupid lib? Like, tell me what's going on here, my guy. Jackson Cornelius says, is Biden fit to run in the next election? I don't believe so. He was too old to run in the last election. Pellin says, is absolutely right. IDs are not easy to get. Thank you very much for confirming that, Pellin. Jackson Cornelius says, you need an ID to do literally anything. No, there are so many things you don't need an ID for, Jackson. Again, why aren't we acknowledging the fact that the Republican Party is using voter ID laws to make it harder for Democrats to vote? Like, why won't you guys acknowledge that? I find that to be very strange. Grant Davis says, so there's no DMV in Democratic areas in Kansas? BS. No, Grant Davis, there are fewer DMVs in Democratic areas in red and purple states. Again, I would be happy to send you this information. I think it is illuminating that you are not just sending me a DM asking me for this information, and instead you're just insisting, well, I can do it, so why can't everybody else do it? I need to calm down. I'm getting into a fight. That's not what we do here. Uberlar says, should the Supreme Court judges have a lifetime appointment? No, they should not. Jack says, genuine question. Wouldn't voter ID laws affect both the left and the right, though? So that is an excellent question, Jack. And this is part of the reason why I have such a problem with the Republican Party, is because they have they've crunched the numbers and they have found exactly who has IDs and who does not have IDs. And poor people and people of color, marginalized communities, they have IDs at a lower rate than people that vote Republican. So, like white, Christian, males, basically. And so not only have they instituted voter ID laws to keep, people of color or poor people from voting, because those are the people that tend to vote for Democrats, but also they close down polling locations in Democratic areas, so they have to wait longer to vote or travel further to vote. And they close down DMVs in Democratic areas so that people who don't have IDs but who want to vote have a harder time getting them. Does that make sense, Jack? Let me know. Jackson Cornelius says, you got to be kidding. I'm literally not. And again, send me a DM. I will happily send you all of the data that you want. I'm sure you'll just tell me that it's fake, because I don't think that you're really here in good faith. Grant Davis says, I have to drive 60 miles to a DMV. You don't like being challenged, do you? Grant Davis, I'm done with you. See you later, my guy. Alrighty. Jackson Cornelius says, no one wants to DM you, brother. Again, that's another block. Fantastic. Alrighty. But thank you for increasing my visibility in the algorithm, Grant Davis and Jackson Cornelius. I really appreciate you guys being here. Alrighty, John Abbott says during COVID, many DMVs also went to appointment only with 5 to 6 month wait times and never changed back. I didn't know that, John Abbott. That is interesting. JP says, Jared, Donald Trump said you need an ID to shop, groceries. It's a word. God damn, you guys are nailing it fucking over on the Twitch and the YouTube today. Z Sarah says I couldn't buy a gumball because I left my ID at home. Excellent. Ecuadorian says I feel like Czech Republic should turn against Trump and help keep America from overtaking our Latin American country's sovereignty. I mean, I am really curious about the global political implications of something like that. I'm not saying no. I'm just saying how interesting. Alrighty, let's scroll up here. Helen says the fact that there is little fraud in elections proves IDs are not needed. Excellent. Jack, did you hear my explanation for your question? I want to know what you think about it. Alrighty. Let's see here. Oh, the sandwich guy got acquitted. That's pretty fun. I like that. Alrighty. It's so funny that this Jackson Cornelius guy had such a fucking bug up his ass about voter ID laws when his question was, is Biden too old to run the next election? And I was literally agreeing with him. So, people here not in good faith. They come in all sorts of flavors. Everybody. Let's see here. Yeah, these guys wasted a lot of fucking time here. Czar, sorry it took me so long to get to your comment here. I don't know if you're still here or not, but I was busy getting into it with a bunch of trolls. Do you think the Supreme Court is going to rule against Trump's tariffs? I don't know. I would never put money on the right-wing Supreme Court doing the right thing. But just based on how arguments went, it seems like they're pretty skeptical. And you never know. Like sometimes the Supreme Court is more influenced by billionaire dollars than, threats from Donald Trump. And Mel says Congress can override SCOTUS. They can't exactly override SCOTUS, but they can pass laws that sort of like change SCOTUS's rulings. So sometimes SCOTUS will rule that that's not what the rule as it is written does not mean the thing that it says. And so then Congress can go back and pass a new law that fixes whatever that problem is. So it's a little more complicated than that, but generally speaking, the answer is yes. Uperlar says, what are your thoughts on Tuesday's results? Is the work getting done? The work is getting done, Upar. The work is working. I'm buoyed by it, but we still got to do more. There were millions and millions of votes that still went the wrong way and millions of people who still did not vote. So the work continues. Waylon says, can we, the people, impeach Supreme Court justices? I don't believe so. I think the only thing we can do is elect people who will impeach Supreme Court justices who do impeachable shit like what the current Supreme Court is doing. Jack says, yes, I heard you. Thank you, Jack. Alrighty. Jack says, are you surprised with NYC mayor asking for money, or was this known? So somebody asked me about this earlier, Jack, and I got to tell you, so two things about this. Number one, I can think of a bunch of completely normal and legal reasons why somebody who was just elected to office would continue fundraising. That's number one. But number two is I don't know if it's a real thing. I don't know if that's accurate. If I only hear about a piece of news in my live stream chats, I'm skeptical that it's a real thing. I had somebody in my live stream earlier telling me that ISIS endorsed Mamdani and that Mamdani was an Islamic radicalist. And I'm like, yeah, I know that's a lie. So there you go. Right. Kimberlina says, did they say if tariffs are shut down, they would pay back all the tariffs? How would that work? I don't think we know yet, Kimberlina. So, yeah, unfortunately, that is, and it's not even just me not knowing. Like, I literally watched an expert today say we don't know what would happen in that situation. All right, San Juan says Mamdani's new wife Rama is smoking. They met on Hinge, seem happy. If not, you think I have a chance with Mamdani's wife? You never know, man. Follow your heart is what I always say. Flamingo Mo says every NYC mayor does this. Their transition staff is working but not paid until inauguration. All right, that makes sense. Jack says there's a video of him saying it. Maybe it's AI. I have no fucking clue anymore. Yeah, Jack, I'm not saying that it's right or wrong. I'm just saying that we have to double check everything, especially where left-wing politicians are concerned, because there is a lot of money behind putting out fake information and misinformation about left-wing politicians. Alrighty. Ecuadorian baseball pitcher has asked me, if my Soros check has come in the mail yet. No, I mean, I've been to 2 Kings protests and I haven't gotten paid for a single one. I'm still waiting on that money. Right. JP says my city went bankrupt with the mayor literally smoking crack. Fundraising can have reasons smoking crack. So that's very funny. Alrighty. Susie Spanish says probably tariffs reimbursed only to corporations and not to people. That is accurate. Okay. Okay. Wayland, I got you. And I don't really know, Voice for Ethiopian Orthodox Christians, Oromia region, RC. I don't know what that is. Okay. Thank you for being here, Six Sir. Let's see here. Magaverse Verse says, we have a precedent. Chucking a hoagie at an ICE agent is a free expression of our First Amendment rights. You fucking love to see it, my guy. All right, Jack says, what have you heard about the BBC News faking clips with editing? I haven't heard anything specific about that, Jack, but I do know that even legitimate news sources sometimes get tricked by edited and AI footage. Was it the Times of New London published a quote from former New York Mayor Bill de Blasio saying that he didn't think Mamdani's plans were going to work, and then it turns out that wasn't the same Bill de Blasio that was the former mayor. It was just some dude in Long Island named Bill de Blasio. So, just check your information with multiple sources. Wayland says, how many people in the House does it take to impeach a Supreme Court justice? I don't know. My guess is that it's the same as impeaching the president. So a majority in the House and 2/3 of the Senate, I believe. Ready. Jack says, how much wood would a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood? Jarrett. 2/3, says Magaverse Verse. Yeah, didn't I say 67 votes? Pretty sure I said that. Or is it 2/3 of the House, is Magaverse? Is that what you're saying? Ready. All right, everybody, we're at an hour, so get in your final questions. C. Sarah says, does my Soros check come in addition to my Elders of Zion check? All right, everybody. Thank you for the comments and the gifts and the likes and the shares. I really appreciate all the support you guys give me in this channel. I'm hoping that what I'm doing is helping. That's why I do it. And so I appreciate you guys helping me keep this thing going. If there are any questions that you have while I am not streaming, DMs are open. And please do not be shy about reaching out. I want to be a resource for all of y'all to be more informed and activated and organized. So if I can be that resource for you, use me and abuse me, use me until I am all used up. Discord is one of my favorite resources for both getting in touch, but also connecting with other people in the Ask Me Anything About Politics community. And also there's great recommendations on there for books and podcasts, and also great organizations for you to be working with. If you want to support the show financially, you can, but you don't have to. I have a Patreon that you can join for as little as $1 a month. Shout out to my patrons, Robert, Shannon, Carmine, and Patrick. Y'all are the goats. I also have a store that you can buy things from. Links are in the bio. And you can send gifts on TikTok and Twitch and YouTube and all of the various channels. There are all these really fun ways that y'all can send money to creators. But again, you don't have to if you don't want to. I know that we're all struggling these days. 1A Mason says, I don't agree with you on a lot of stuff, but I think you are an all right guy. Just saying. Thank you, 1AM Son. I appreciate you. I finally figured out how to say your name, 1AM Son. Yeah, I had a suspicion that you might be here in good faith, and that's why I did not block you earlier. So yeah, come back again, ask any question that you like, shoot me a DM or an email. I'm happy to get into this shit. All right, let's see here. Anything else that I want to say before we get to the final questions? Get in touch, do the work, patron schedule. Oh yeah, regular streaming schedule is Monday through Friday, starting around 11:30 a.m. Pacific time. Tomorrow we are doing a special late show at 3:30 p.m. Pacific time. We will not be streaming at 11:30 tomorrow. We will be streaming at 11:30. We're streaming at 3:30 p.m. Pacific time. And then we will probably most likely be going back to our regular schedule starting on Monday. And lastly, just my heartfelt plea that you all do the work, because us doing the work is the only way that we get out of this shit. All right, 1AM Son says, I was starting to think you were saying it wrong just because you didn't like me. No, I'm just bad at reading these screen names. I think that me trying to read everybody's screen names is the most fun part of the show for a lot of people, I'm sure. User a bunch of numbers says, will Mamdani's victories change anything about mainstream politics? Yeah, I mean, I think that since I think every election we are pushing the needle a little bit further. Like the Democratic Party is becoming more progressive, and the Republican Party is becoming more extremist and right wing. Hey, I finally made my live goal. Thank you so much to everybody who contributed. Muzz King, you're the goat, Muzz King. Thank you so much. Alrighty, let's see here. Get out of here. Confirm this. Love that you called it a screed name. Is that not what we're calling it these days? Am I so old? Last night I pulled the 6-7 and everybody applauded. Okay. So yeah, Mamdani's victory is going to continue probably the trend of the Democratic Party being more of a representative, progressive party. But yeah, let's see here. Yeah, I think we're just going to see that trend continuing, where the Democratic Party is winning elections with economic populist politicians who are also younger, and I think that is a positive trend. Tishy says, "If it was up to me, I'd send you $1 million, but I'm 75 and on a fixed income. But I love you, just saying." Thank you, Tishy. I really appreciate that. So yeah, don't send me any money. Make sure you put food on the table. Times they are rough out here. Okay, Susie Spanish, thank you for being here. That Tusk guy says, "What better, white chocolate or dark chocolate?" Dark chocolate every day of the week. All right, Uperlar says, "In your opinion, what's Trump's next move after getting hit by the blue wave on Tuesday?" I mean, he told us what his next move is going to be. He's going to pressure the Republican Congress to get rid of the filibuster so that they can end the shutdown, and then also they are going to keep the filibuster gone so that they can pass a bunch of voter suppression legislation and a bunch of crazy ass laws to criminalize being a Democrat and shit like that. Is going to get real weird if that happens. So, we'll just have to fucking see, All right. Platland Spice says, "Everything is nice with Platland Spice." That's pretty funny. All right. Everybody. Czar says, "How come Trump pardoning Binance co-founder is not investigated as corruption?" Because the people who would investigate that, Czar, are Trump's people. They are loyalists who will literally do whatever Trump tells them to do. So the same reason why they threw away that investigation into border czar Tom Human accepting a $50,000 bribe from an FBI bust. What is it? Like strike team or undercover or whatever. It was a sting operation. That's what I was looking for. He's gonna, Pam Bondi and Kash Patel and Dan Bongino and Shadow Attorney General Stephen Miller are not going to investigate Donald Trump because he's their daddy. All right, everybody. I'm going to get out of here. Thank you for being here. Be good to each other. Be good to yourselves. Self-care is part of the work. And I will see you guys tomorrow. Same bat place, different bat time. Check the schedule and I'll see you there. Goodbye. Goodbye, 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 goodbye. Bye. Goodbye.